What's up, people? Welcome to another edition of the New Breed Podcast, the world's best music show, talking about everything brutal, new, death, hard, slam, grind, thrash, core, industrial metal. I'm one half of your hosting duo, Jay Horsecow. With me, I have my partner in crime, the notorious TIM, Tim Anderson Jr. Tim, how's it going?
Great, doing great.
Fantastic. And joining us this week, special guest, we have Andrew from the band Project 86. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us.
Fellas, the pleasure's all mine. Thank you for having me.
We are glad to have you. Yo, that new album is something else, man. That new album is
really
something
good,
else,
man.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, man. Yeah,
you cover a lot of ground, dude. You cover a lot of ground. I was saying to Tim, Tim, how would you describe this to someone who's never heard it before? Because there's so many influences in there, and you combine them in such an interesting way. It's one song to the next. I had no idea what was coming.
Yeah,
that's not a bad thing. I appreciate
No,
that.
It's awesome. Like it wasn't the same. Like, oh shit. Oh, look, another deathcore intro. No, they were switching it up all over the place. Dude, it kept me paying attention. Dude, I know I'm interested when I keep looking down because I have my tablet as my jukebox. When I keep looking down, like, is this the same album? The artist change? Oh no. Yeah, man, it was wild.
That's wild, man.
Jay, let me ask you this, Jay. Not to cut you off. I'm sorry, dude, but when we were talking before we started, I said you're from Cali, right? Do you say Cali or would you say California? Like
Me?
if you, yeah.
Oh, I would say he's from California.
Okay. He said only people from the East Coast say Cali. Like nobody over there does. I found that interesting.
Oh, it's like people saying you're from New Jersey, right? Like, oh, what exit? Nobody says that in New Jersey, right? Right? It's just a different way of speaking.
Yeah. Anyway, back to this. So what I was saying before we started too. You're originally from Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah, I'm from near Erie originally, and
I
lived
shit.
there
Okay.
until I was 14. So I've spent most of my life in Southern California, but
Gotcha.
I still have really close family in Pennsylvania, so I understand both coasts deeply. I don't consider myself to be a native Californian at all.
Gotcha.
If anything, I'm from nowhere.
Okay.
I was gonna say, Erie. My mom went to college out there. She went to Mercyhurst, and the joke was Erie, Dreary Erie is the mistake on the lake. Right? So,
oh yeah, definitely.
So since we're going all over the place, back to what Jay was saying, I could have swore because me and Jay were talking. I'm like, do you hear like a Will Haven kind of sound in this? Like, are you guys fans of Will Haven?
That did not enter the equation at all. I know the band Will Haven, but I can't tell you the last time I've heard a Will Haven record. It was probably back in the 90s or something.
Holy shit,
2000s. But yeah, there's a lot going on here, and I guess the band has always been intentional about just keeping it interesting in terms of the influence, the sound, trying to diversify song to song on a record and from record to record. But I've always wanted to go heavier, and this is more in the wheelhouse of where I've wanted the sound to evolve toward. So it's taken a bit, but we got there.
Yeah, it's funny because what Jay was saying too, like these days you're so used to hearing like the same formula over and over, and it's just like some records you hear and you're just like, oh god, this again. But
Totally.
like when I'm listening to this record, it's like it's got like the highs and lows in it, man, that just bring you up and then bring you down, but in the best way possible. Like you guys fucking killed it. I don't know what you guys did over there, but that record is really fucking good, man. Like,
thanks, man.
I was super impressed with that record because I'm like I know your guys' stuff before that, and I mean not that it's bad, but this record, man, like I was like, dude, this is really because Shane was like, dude, you need to listen to this record. I'm like, all right, I'm getting to it. Like, sorry. And then when I did, and we got back with him, I was like, yes, let's do it because this record is really fucking good, dude. Like I was saying to Jay too, like. I don't know what he would say about this, but like, I'm like, I swear I hear like a Will Haven and like a Demon Hunter influence in this because I just, from hearing all the Demon Hunter stuff before, I'm like, it has parts of that I hear. And then when I looked, I was like, oh, of course they have an affiliation with Demon Hunter because you guys have what, ex-members of the band or members they're in there?
No, not at all. In fact,
really?
Well, we're from the same circle.
Okay.
There you go.
And one of our former members, who hasn't been in the band for 14 years, started a band with Demon Hunter's frontman Ryan.
Gotcha.
That's like a Depeche Mode kind of thing.
Oh,
But that's the only connection there is there. In fact, because we're sort of from the same world, label wise or whatever, I always purposely avoid most of the bands that come from the same universe. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't listen to any, like I couldn't tell you more than a couple Demon Hunter songs, even though we've played with them, we know those guys, we're friends, but it's like you don't want to do the same thing that your buddies are doing, you know.
yeah,
So you want
definitely.
to try to do something different, you know. Yeah, we're talking, man, you've already touched so many angles here. As far as trying to come up with something that takes you on a journey of sorts, there was a lot of intention put into that, trying to do something that hopefully tries to stand out from all of the other heavy music that's out there. There was a lot of intention put into that. I know that all the guys, you know, a lot of people touch this, and the conversation that I always had with everyone before we started writing music is, let's write a record not with riffs and influences that are typical as the starting point. So instead of thinking, what's the riff? What's the chorus? Let's throw that notion completely out. And I would literally drive guys nuts by saying, no riffs. Let's not write any riffs. And it's like, imagine saying that to a guitar player who plays heavy music. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what do you want me to do, dude? You know? I'm like, let's think about this in terms of emotion. Let's think about it in terms of imagery. Let's think about it in terms of where we want to take someone. And if riffs occur within that are unique, so be it. But let's not say, here's the cool riff, here's the chorus, here's the breakdown, because that's what every band does. So I thought about this, you know, a couple of years ago before we started writing any of it. It was, how do I communicate this and get my team to buy into something that is outside the box? And I said, I have to think of a story. I have to think of a picture. I have to be able to communicate where we're taking people conceptually, very succinctly and distinctly and linearly, you know what I mean? So that I can say, this is the song we want. This is how we get there. This is what I'm going to say. And here's 3 examples of songs that have nothing to do with metal that I think accomplish this. Now take all this that I just gave you, and here's a voice memo of what the drums are doing that I beatboxed. You know what I mean? And so here's how we're going to get there. Now you put your spin on everything I just gave you, and it worked. I've never approached it that way ever.
Yeah, that's
so here's a
super
story.
interesting.
Here's a story. Here are the bits and pieces or the chapters of the story, all broken down, all written out, all developed already. And here's this piece of the puzzle. Here's how I want you to get there. Here's where I want to take the audience. This is a fast song. This is a slow song. This is this type of influence. And now let's just write it, you know?
Okay.
And that's how we executed this. Totally different approach than we've ever done. I think a different approach than most bands would do it.
Yeah.
And it worked. So now we have a new formula, and bringing the music to fruition was magical. And then for me, vocally, I just wanted to go where I hadn't gone before, which was kind of, you know, I've always done, you know, singing, shouting, you know, an aggressive sound that's kind of more of a, like, it's not full like death. You know what I mean? It's more of like
right.
It's always been kind of my thing, you know, but I've always wanted to take it further. And at the live shows, starting about a decade ago, I believe it or not, in order to save my voice, because when I do that typical sound that I do, it's really taxing on my vocal cords. I started singing more aggressively, but it's actually singing softer. So the death sound that is the new thing on this record is actually, it's pragmatism on my part. But I'd never really done it on a record. And in doing it on this record, and there's another story to this that I'll tell you guys as we get deeper into this if we have time. It's actually what feels most natural for me. So
Okay.
I feel like I found my actual voice on this record, and it took me however many years to get here, but better late than never to the party. And I feel like we're like now in the conversation with really heavy music that's going on right now. even though it's
Dude.
not all that way, but it's in the conversation. Because when it gets heavy, it's really, really heavy.
Yeah. And so I was texting Tim because I was listening this morning, and I was like, Tim, my exact words are, dude, this album is totally wild. And I said the three things I picked up real quickly were deathcore, Pink Floyd, and industrial.
Yeah,
And I said all
there.
three of these things. I said I'm going through it, and I wish I wrote down the song names. And I said, dude, they're covering all these sounds, and it all. Credit to you, Andrew. It flows. Like, it's not like, you know how some bands, they try and do something different, and it comes off as like when you tip over the fucking silverware drawer. Like, it's just janky and jangly, and wow, what the fuck just happened? There's, I don't want to say peaks and valleys, but it all comes together into a cohesive whole where none of it sounded out of place. Or we've had we've all had those moments where we stop and we go, where'd that come from?
Right.
I guess they were going for some weird Jesus lizard thing at that moment. I don't know. That's kind of angly. No, it all just flows, man. I was really kind of stoked. I was like, Tim, I'm impressed.
I can't say thank you enough, man. And yeah, we did really try to push the boundary on where we're taking people in one piece of, music, and there were a lot of influences. And big shout to the creative team, man. A lot of talented people have touched this thing. Everyone from Bo Burchell to Grayson Stewart, Corey Brandon, Matt Putman. Got to give them all the shouts. Mike Palmquist, Darren King. Everybody who's touched this thing is really good.
So Bo produced the record, right?
Bo co-produced.
Okay.
I really handed off specific jobs to specific people. So there was a lot of wearing of different hats going on. Bo was there with me when we recorded the vocal, and then he mixed the record, but he wasn't there for any of the songwriting, pre-production, or the instrumentation.
Okay. And Bo is from Seosin, correct?
Yeah, he plays guitar in Seosin.
Okay. Shit, I didn't even know he produced records.
He's amazing. He's done a lot of stuff. He's a very prolific producer and mixer.
Yeah, he's a great guitar player. I fucking love Seosin, man. They're from California, right?
We're from the same circle, man. We're
okay.
both from Orange County. I mean, he's out in Temecula right now, which is about an hour from where I live. But it was cool because, I'm typically working with people out of state. I was in Nashville for part of this process, Springfield, Missouri, Arkansas, believe it or not. And
Damn.
Bo's in Temecula, which is only an hour away. So I was like, yes, can't wait to work with someone semi-close. To fly anywhere.
Yeah, dude, like the production of this record is like, we and Jay have been doing this shit. I did a podcast before this for 6 years. We've been doing this for 3. Like, I've never heard anyone describe a record process the way you just did. Like, the way you guys did it is super fucking interesting, man.
That's cool, man. I really appreciate
How did you get the guitarists to not write a riff? Because they're sitting there, they're going, come on, I can do this. Just 0-1-2, 0-1-2, I can do this.
There's riffs all over this record.
Right.
It's just getting guys to think differently.
And
we've done enough records that I know how that process works, and I know how guys write, and because I'm not the one strumming the guitar, I'm coming at them from a different angle automatically. And so I'm just like, I know that I'm going to push them towards the sun, and I know where we're going to end up is the moon, right? Mm-hmm. It's just getting them outside of their own comfort zones enough so that the starting place is different and hopefully fun. You know what I mean? Because that's what you really want, is you want people enjoying the process because you're trying something new, or you're going outside of what's comfortable for you. And for me, vocally, it's the same thing, right? Trying new things. That's the magic sauce, that gets everybody pumped. And so part of that was like the whole concept of the thing too. It's like, okay, here's what we're going to do. Like the first, like pre-production meeting that we had, or like songwriting meeting we had, I got out this whiteboard and I just drew out the whole record. And I was just like, okay, here's this picture. Here's what the album cover is going to be. Here's what's happening. Here's where we're going. Here's what we're trying to say, and it's all like really scary stuff too, which is what I think everyone liked. I was like, it's going to be really scary. It's going to be really ominous. We're not going to let people off the hook. Like, so like there were a lot of songs that didn't make the cut because it was like, this is super rad, but it doesn't have the tone that I want, which is like just this like thing that doesn't let you off the hook for 12 songs, you know, where it's just like, you're just like at the end of it, you're like, I need a shower. Like, dude, that was a ride, you know?
Yeah.
So now it ended up becoming a double album. So there are a lot of things that didn't make LP1 that will be on LP2, you know, and basically LP1 is its own thing, takes you on its own journey. And then the second part of it is 2 separate EPs. One is a little bit more of that digital kind of influence. I hate the word industrial, but I don't know.
What else do you use? Yeah.
Nobody's invented a word for heavy electronic music that isn't dubstep circa 10 years ago.
Skrillex.
or industrial. Like, there is no other word. You know, one of the bands that is a huge influence for me, or a band that I just really love as a fan, is a band named called Health. I don't know if you guys know Health.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
They're super rad, and they do that thing. The really heavy, electronic music. It still has an industrial sort of element to it, but it sounds modern. You know, so that was always the conversation. Was like, how do we introduce electronic elements to this without being XYZ? You know, we don't want to be Rob Zombie or Marilyn Manson or Nine Inch Nails, you know, which are all great bands and artists, but we want to be something different than that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that was the conversation with those elements. So one of the EPs on the second part of the double album, it has a little bit more of that electronic bent while still being heavy, you know, guitars and such. And then the other half, we just went further with the heavy. So it's more metal. Like, and I think people would be like, who is this? You know, like, it's out there in terms of comparing to what Project 86 has done. But it's been something I've always wanted to do. And I've let the fans know, okay, I'm literally calling this the Brutality EP. Just so you guys have your expectations set that this isn't going to be your typical Project 86 experience. And we've sort of primed people for where we want to go with that by how heavy part 1 went. So now I think that the floodgates are open a bit. And once we unveil this, people will be like, holy, you know, it's aggressive.
I like when bands do that. I mean, the last example I can think of a band trying to work at the margins and try new things without getting too far off the reservation was Tim and I are both fans of the band Curl Up and Die from was that Vegas, Tim? Reno, Vegas, something like that?
Yeah, one of
where
them,
they did back-to-back EPs. We may be through with the past, but the past ain't through with us.
Mm-hmm.
And they got off the center. Like, they did some weird sort of there was an electronic song which was all Morse code, which was kind of funny because they had a sick sense of humor too, which is wild.
Mm-hmm.
But there were songs that were super aggressive. There were songs where he sung. There were songs where they had these weird, like, I don't know. At one point, it sounds like a fucking 747 came through the studio. It was just insane, like, noise. But that kept me, as a fan, that's what keeps me interested. Where I'm going, where are you going next?
Totally.
You know, I mean, I think we can all admit there is space for bands like AC/DC who make the same album 13 times in a row, right? God bless them. You know, God bless the Young Brothers. But it's more interesting when you don't know where this band is going next. And it's like, well, I'm going to put this in and let's see. And I love my favorite maneuver now, which we see all the time, Andrew, is a band releases a single, and that single is maybe an outlier on the album where it's either much softer or much heavier than the rest of the album. So you're going,
right.
What am I going to get myself into? Then you get the rest of the album and you go, what is this? This is not what I wasn't expecting. That's awesome.
Right.
As a fan, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think these days, especially with the amount of music that comes out, like, it's hard to set yourself aside from everyone else too.
Yeah,
it's very hard.
That's where this whole thing started. It was like, oh, what are we gonna do, dude? That's like fresh, you know? What are we gonna do that's different? And for me, it was like, well, we are kind of, especially when we started this thing, which is back during pandemic times, we are kind of living in a dystopian hellscape. So, you know, I know every heavy fan loves that conversation. So let's start there. So I wanted to explore, I say we, but I wanted to explore what it would look like, or what it will look like when humanity finally progresses far enough in its or our technological prowess that we are able to conquer death as a species through technology. So that's really what this album's about, is what would happen and what would it say about human nature when we get to that point. What will it all look like? What might it look like? So the word is transhumanism. And
yeah, kind of scary. I mean, shit, get me out of this meat suit, man. Upload me to the internet and just, get me out of this decomposing carbon-based meat suit.
Right.
But it is an interesting thought experiment, right? What do we become transcendent? Do we end up like Wall-E, right? Bunch of fat people in carts drinking out of straws as the robot. It really does make you wonder. But dystopian hellscape is a fair assessment of where we landed over the last couple of years.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of like looking at what's going on in the world and saying, okay, if this goes unchecked for 20 years, where do we end up? None of it is fact. None of it is like, this is for sure what's going to happen, but it's just reflecting on current events basically, and just, casting that forward a little bit. And
I'm assuming you're a sci-fi fan, Andrew?
Oh yeah, of course.
So what's your favorite dystopian sci-fi?
And so the starting point for this record, and there are some very specific, I'm not even going to call it nods, I'm going to call it homage to both Blade Runner films.
Okay.
To me, Cyberpunk and all of it started with the first Blade Runner. And I've read the book a couple of times. I'm a big fan of Philip K. Dick, big fan of Ridley Scott, big fan of Hans Zimmer. So all that was kind of the starting point. It certainly didn't stop there, but that was the beginning of the conversation, because I've always been obsessed with those worlds, and there's so much to draw from there. And I know I'm not the first artist to pull from that, but we wanted to take cyberpunk, dystopia, and horror and throw it all together in a blender and try to spit out something that was unique while honoring the tropes of the genre.
Right.
So you've got the evil corporation, you've got the mysterious technology, you've got the sinister villains, the world leaders, the one world thing, the one world blah, blah, blah. And then we put some new stuff in there. We've got a huge tower that's kind of almost like a re-emerged Tower of Babel situation. And then the twist on it is it's all geared around a big music festival, or like an event that's like a world gathering. Coachella meets Burning Man meets Tomorrowland at this tower that's actually like this resort destination. But then we find out that this tower in the city that no one's ever seen before, that's kind of a template for where civilization is headed in the urban sense, is kind of a template and a harnessing point for this convergence of both technology and spiritual energy. So a lot of weird stuff happens there.
That's all. I mean, that's awesome. I mean, you're right in my wheelhouse.
Yeah, see, we all love that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Blade Runner is the archetype by which future dystopians were. I mean, maybe it's because of our age. Maybe it was the first. Maybe that was the first real instance of a good dystopia on a screen, right? Where the effects were not overwhelming, but they were. I can close my eyes right now and I can see the giant Tyrell Corporation pyramid, right? Like, I mean, it was the first visualization of that type of future, and then people are going to argue, well, what about Brazil? Well, Brazil was more comedy, but then you can add in all the other stuff that came after it. It's like, Fifth Element and whatnot, where it's all kind of, nobody does the future utopia because that's kind of boring. Like,
it is.
That's a George Clooney movie. It's like, I don't want to watch this. Like,
there's nothing to talk about.
Where's the intrigue?
Yeah,
where's the intrigue? Give me the robots. And Philip K. Dick, he was wild. He was wild, and then he had, what did he have, a stroke? And then all of a sudden he got really weird. Like, some of his later stuff I love it, but Ubik and some of that stuff, he really goes down. Tim is like, what the fuck are these guys talking about? He really goes down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, I think the last thing I watched out, maybe, I don't even know if it has to do with this, but HBO Raised by Wolves, is that something that you guys would consider?
Yeah, it's close.
there's a lot of incarnations of what a dark future could look like, right? And you've got everything from Hunger Games. There's a lot of pop culture stuff to, Black Mirror. Black Mirror's
Oh, okay.
Fantastic anthology series that touches on a lot of this stuff.
Really dark.
It feels very close to home. And I'd be lying if I didn't say I watched a lot of Black Mirror as we were trying to put this thing together and considering this whole like upload sequence or what that might look like, So
yeah, that show is dark, man. The wife couldn't even. She's like, I can't do this anymore. This is really depressing. So she wouldn't even finish it. I finished it myself. But yeah, it's really kind of does make you stop and think. But so Andrew, you've been around for quite a while, right? 98, 99 is when you guys started.
I've been on this earth longer than that. Yeah, the band started actually in 96. And
wow. Okay.
It took a couple years to put it together. So let's say the journey began in 94.
Okay.
Put out the first record in 98. And this is number 11. Which
wow, it's a hell of a career, man.
Which is crazy. Yeah. And we've done a lot of different things along the way. This would be one polar end of the sonic spectrum for sure. But I think if anyone is just hearing about the band for the first time or has never checked it out, maybe heard the band name but never listened to anything, I would ask that you start with the new album, OMNI Pt.1. Part 2 is coming in the fall of 2023. And then work your way backwards because there's a lot of twists and turns there. And you'll be surprised to where it goes because we've tried a lot of things along the way. And I would love to say that everything's been pulled off equally well, but maybe I'm biased. I believe that Omni is some of the band's best work. And
I would agree. I started working my way backwards. I did what you did. You said because Tim said, "Hey, we're talking to the guy from Project A6." I said, "Aren't they a new metal band from back in the late '90s?" He said, "Yeah, man."
Definitely started there.
He said, "Yeah, they're still going." And then I listened to Omni first, and I was like, "This was not what I was expecting at all." And then I started to work my way backwards. I'm like, "Oh, okay, I can see." With each step backwards, I can see getting closer to the, for lack of a better analogy, the primordial ooze, right? So I can see where everything came from. But yeah, for any of our fans that are listening or watching, we always talk about one of the coolest things about new metal is, and even the stuff that was new metal adjacent, is everybody came in with a different book of influences and they just grabbed it and ran with it. And Tim and I always talk about, we want more bands that push the boundaries of not fitting so solidly in the genre. This album is a great example. I put this, Tim, right with that Evil Gloom record we listened to that from that band from Japan where they're covering so much ground. You're like, holy crap! Like,
yeah,
I like this, but I have no idea how I would describe it to another person without saying it's a little bit of everything, and it really just works.
And I really did listen to a lot of different kinds of music in sort of getting in the mood for this. And again, you asked with you asked the crew of dudes that have participated in this thing, and you asked them about the playlists that I gave them. I said, just listen to this, let it get you in the mood or whatever, and don't freak out if it doesn't sound anything like where we want to go. So I put all this wild, weird music on a playlist, film scores and weird just sounds and a lot of like just obscure DJs and electronic music and some pop stuff that you would never imagine. Like there's Nicki Minaj songs on this playlist. I'm just like, don't freak out. It's Nicki Minaj. Just listen to the production. Just feel the rhythm of the beat. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. Or maybe there's just like one little piece of a song where it's like, okay, when they go here, that's where I want to do this. So yeah, and obviously a lot of heavy influences. Like I love death and doom and stuff that makes you just feel gross. There's a ton of bands that I listen to that are ridiculously heavy, and I love that. I just love music that makes you feel something, So that was the point, is like, how do we give people chills as much as possible on one record? Now, this one is intentionally cinematic in scope because we're building out an actual film that goes
Mhm.
with it. And
Oh, wow.
I wrote an actual piece of fiction, a book that goes with it. So it is about storytelling, world building, imagery, and such. We're crafting, hopefully, an immersive experience here. And we've dropped 3 music videos that are basically hybrid live action animation. And that's what this film piece is going to be. And so we just finished the shoot yesterday where we shot 3 more songs. And I just got off the phone on a meeting with the production team for that. We're talking about narration elements and how we're going to tie this whole thing together into one piece. But we want so you could take the entirety of LP1, listen to it, get into the lyrics, and then you see a story being told, actually as a part of it. And then you could actually read a book as well, that it's all cohesive. And we actually have a fan-driven ARG that's about to drop as well. When I
No
say
shit.
fan-driven, like we have a Patreon community of about 200 folks that have supported this thing from the beginning. We have the best inner circle of fans that you could imagine. And it's been a truly collaborative experience, this Patreon community, where I post a demo, I get feedback, and I actually integrate the feedback from these fans into making decisions. So it's a very unique situation there as well. And then 6 or 8 of those guys came to me and said, we want to build an alternate reality game around Omni. I'm like, oh my gosh, okay.
God damn.
I'm like, as long as you guys can do this without too much from me, like I can stand in the back and be a creative director, but I just don't have the bandwidth to be the driving force here. You're gonna have to, kind of take the baton and run with it, and it's worked. And we've actually been testing this, quote unquote, beta testing it in the Patreon community, and now we're about to drop this to the greater audience. So I think it's going to be a fun thing. It's just supplemental, but like any alternate reality game, it's meant to allow you to further deepen your experience with a given world. And that's what, that's what we want here. That's what I want. I'm kind of the George Lucas of this whole Omni experiment. And it's been really fun. And in doing these short films that stand alone, music videos, and the greater film, it's so satisfying to see a vision of like a world come together that you're building that has nuances and little details and inventions of this evil corporation, that are coming to life, and all the characters and such. It's just really fun. And then I'm playing characters in it as well. I'm playing their 2 primary antagonists, 2 villains in this, and I'm playing both of them. And that is super, super fun.
Dude, where do you find the time? Because I know you also have a podcast as well, right?
I actually have a couple, and this Patreon that we do for Project 86 is a bi-weekly podcast. So I do 2 podcasts a week for that, unless I'm in the studio or at a shoot, and then I just post live content. But I do that, and then I have another podcast I do less regularly that's called Pioneers. That's just looking at creative process in a lot of different fields of creative work, from music to film and beyond, visual art and so much more. But finding the time is all about budgeting on a day-to-day basis and making decisions based upon what's the priority at a given moment. For example, today was supposed to be a day off, and this is my fifth meeting, 5th call. The other 4, we had 2 regarding the film and then 2 regarding the music. So we finished up.
Yeah.
Freeze?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe
Creative editing.
Yeah.
Shoot for 3 of the songs for LP1. We finished those up, and now we're working on the other pieces of the puzzle for both the music and the film. Now I'm gonna have the space to go back in, because I wrote a draft of the book And now the film is informing the book. So we're having to make decisions on basically what to cut. So it's like, you write all these characters in and all these subplots, and then you have to sort of hone in on what's the most important pieces of the puzzle. And I'm cutting a lot of things now, which is fine. That's part of the process, because we want a cohesive story that you can follow, and we want it to be as strong as possible. So
I think that's the future, right, Andrew? And by future, I mean the multimodal aspect of your creative stuff, right? It's going to be audio, video, literature, games, movies. I think, especially when you look at some of the stuff that technology is doing now, and some of the wild shit you can do with ChatGPT, and then have it feeding stable diffusion. And as a fan, I geek out on that sort of stuff, right? Because there's a comic book that ties to back when we were kids, right? Oh, there's a comic book that ties to this movie. Oh, and now they have a whole series. Now they're going to make a cartoon. Like, I think that's the future, and I also think it's also probably the easiest way to differentiate yourselves from everybody else.
Yeah, again, that piece of the puzzle is always in the back of my mind, because I've been around long enough that I remember a time in culture as a whole, but especially in music, when we weren't competing with hundreds of thousands of other artists. We were, among many, much fewer in terms of competition. So rising above the noise has become increasingly challenging as we've gone. So in order to get people to pay attention, you have to go further. And I'm like, okay, well, what can we do? What can I do that I know will be great, or at least that I think will be great, that I'm good at? Well, I know I can tell a story. I know I can write a story, and I know that I can direct a piece of film. I know I can do all of those things. So, and the animated element was just always a dream. And we just found the right people to work on this thing, be able to do it on the budgets that we're working with, because I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be able to pull off the things that I want to do, because it's going to cost hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. I don't have a Gorilla's size budget to work with, but
right.
We need Gorilla's quality production. How in the world do we pull that off? And then you go and you watch, go to our YouTube channel, just at Project 86 video, and you check out the last 3 music videos that we dropped, the first 3 from OMNI Pt.1, and the production quality's there. All of these are in 4K. They look like we spent $100,000 on each piece, and we certainly didn't. So yeah, just stoked, man. Stoked, having fun.
So you guys definitely figure that out then, like how to get the, like you said, the gorilla look, but not the gorilla budget. So there's always a way.
Yeah, and the wild thing is, man, from the beginning of this band, I never have known how. I've just known that it's needed to happen. So, this whole thing, it's a very wild, ostentatious, is that a word? Imaginative, grandiose, audacious, ridiculous project. And I'm going, I don't know how I'm going to do any of this, but it needs to happen. And just been figuring it out one step of the way. And I've had a lot of help from a lot of talented people who've come alongside of me. I certainly can't take credit for anything beyond just being the guy with the vision, and showing up for my role in the process. I've really been able to delegate a lot of the pieces of this puzzle to people who are passionate about it as well, teammates. And again, shout on the film side to Spencer Olson and Joel Corpy for coming alongside and being, we have a 3-man team who are doing most of the heavy lifting for the visual elements, and I call them my super ego and my id. I'm the ego. One guy's the id, all creative, and one guy's the super ego, where he's very rational and organized. So it works. It works. So yeah, man, the next piece of the puzzle here is dropping more video content and gearing up to drop LP2 part 2, and everybody. So we drop you know what happens, right? You drop a record and you're like, okay, we're done. We can rest for a minute. Everybody's gonna be stoked on this and listening to it, and all I get now is, when's part 2 coming? We can't wait to, we can't wait for more. You know what I mean? Luckily, yeah, we got it queued up, and man, it's different. It's more bangers. That's what I meant to say about 20 minutes ago. LP2 part 2, there aren't a lot of soft spots. Let's put it that way. Whereas this one is a ride, and it takes you on some slower moments to build up to some peaks and valleys. This is just bangers and bangers and more bangers coming up, part 2. So people should be prepared for that. But it's turned out really good.
Is that expected this year?
Yeah.
Okay.
September.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to be releasing consistent content for the rest of the year.
Are you guys are self-releasing everything?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's even fucking more impressive.
Yeah, that's wild.
I mean, not that you need a label these days, but it's just like the amount of work you guys are doing. You would think like someone would be there like, oh yeah, I like the vision. Let's help you guys put it out. But the fact that you're doing it all by yourself is super impressive, man. We
did put some feelers out to see what kind of partners we could come up with in the industry, whether that's labels or some sort of hybrid model, and we didn't really find a situation that seemed to be the right fit. So don't get me wrong, we do have a team, a marketing team and publicity and such, but largely this is an in-house scenario, and we've just learned a lot of lessons over the years. We were on a major for 2 records. We've been on larger independent labels. We've done distro deals. We've done it all along the way, and feel pretty equipped to do a lot of the heavy lifting on our own. And again, we're not at the end of the road here, so ask me in a year how it all shook out. But so far, so good, man. Whatever we're doing right now seems to be working. And the fans are excited, and that's the most important thing. The people that support this band are excited about what we're doing. And, I don't know what the world looks like after OMNI is completed and all of the boxes are checked in terms of what we want to accomplish here. But the ride has been very enjoyable, and we're making people stoked and hopefully drawing them into the world that we're trying to craft here. And even affecting, some thought maybe along the way. And once we get on the other side of that, who knows? Who knows? That's the fun part of doing this thing. If you can remove the fear from the equation, and I say fear because you do this for a living, and unless you are on a certain level, there's always that underlying anxiety about where's the next paycheck coming from. Right?
Yeah.
And I've lived with that my entire career. And it would be lovely if we could, not have to worry about that. But I haven't lived in a world where that's reality. But I have always been provided for. And that's something that the fans have always shown up for, is at least I'm able to take care of doing this in a way that's of a high enough quality where I can still, live off of it, not live abundantly necessarily, but live off of it and not be homeless, and still make the art that I want to make. And at the end of the day, that's my ideal life, which is pouring everything that I have into the art and hopefully inspiring people as I do so.
So before we run out of time, you guys, like, it would probably take 3 hours to talk about your whole history, but for the younger people listening who are going to go and dive into all of your stuff, let's give them a little, okay, hey, where we started, because I know you said with the major label, was that Atlantic, correct?
Yeah, we were on Atlantic earlier in our career. So the band started in Orange County, California. We were kind of birthed out of the SoCal hardcore heavy music scene, which was very vibrant in the 90s. We all brushed with that scene in various ways, at least the original lineup. And we put out our first record on Tooth and Nail Records out of Seattle. And then we moved over to Atlantic Records on our second and third releases, but went back to Tooth and Nail for a few more releases subsequently and have been independent ever since. I basically founded and started the band. It was kind of a vision that I started with in '94. Like I mentioned, it took a couple of years to find the right guys. We went through some membership changes early on. Went through some membership changes in sort of the middle history of the band in the mid to late aughts, and have had a pretty stable situation the last decade plus. And the band has always sort of taken pride in doing a unique take on heavier music. You mentioned nu metal. We definitely came up with that in mind, and then pivoted when it became oversaturated, and delved more into rock influences, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always had a hankering to go a little bit heavier with the sound, and we finally achieved that on this release. And I see that being a staple of anything that I do musically moving forward, is a little bit more death, doom, heavy metal sound moving forward. I've always been a big electronic music fan though as well, so there's always a little bit of that going on. Yeah, man, we just, the goal of the band has always been to do something unique and to have our own sound, and not be confined by the rules of genres, whether that be hardcore or metal or whatever else. So we've always tried to do our own thing from record to record, song to song. That's it in a nutshell.
So you guys say it's like 98. You guys are in Orange County. I mean, shit, Orange County 98. What would you say? Throwdown, 18 Vision, stuff like that.
Yeah,
so,
man.
I mean,
yeah, dude. Yeah, we know all those guys. Or brushed with all those guys. So
let me ask you this though, because I always like to ask guys that have been in music forever. Like, you're touring in 98, say, all right. So you're on just real quickly, who were like some of the first tours you went out with? I know I read about it. I just forget off the top of my head. Was it who was the first big tour with?
The first big tour we ever did, the first like real national tour, was with POD and Blindside.
That's right. I wanted to say POD, and I'm like, I don't want to sound like an ass. I hate when I sound like an asshole and I'm spewing the wrong shit. But I knew, okay, it was POD.
I mean, it
Dude,
was kind of that world. I mean, we kind of came out of that tooth and nail world, the faith-based scene and all that. And there were a lot of bands. I'm still learning about this even to this day. Like, I never knew that the Seosin dudes were kind of from the same world.
Yeah.
Because we never really played together or anything. But when I got together with Bo, he's like, "Oh yeah, man, this band, this guy." I'm like, dude, how did we never like hang out? We're going to all the same shows. We're into all the same bands.
Mm-hmm.
The Thrice dudes, same thing. Like Dustin and I became friends a few years back and started hanging out a bunch. I'm like, how have we never like hung out? It's so weird. And now the Throwdown guys and the Bleeding Through guys, they used to rent we had a studio, like a practice space, where we did a lot of pre-production and rehearsal and writing for many years in Irvine, which is like one of the bigger towns in Orange County. They used to rent our space from us.
Okay.
So at one point it was us, Bleeding Through, and Throwdown in the same space. It was really funny because Throwdown was always the most respectful, like clean band. Like, we always knew when they had been in there because the space was like clean and organized and like pristine. And we always knew when Bleeding Through had been in there because the place turned into like a tornado. we never knew. It was really funny though, because they were like the polar opposites of each end of that spectrum.
Which is funny because all them bands basically shared every member basically shared every band. So it's like,
yeah.
I mean, at one point got Adamantium sharing members with Throwdown 18. I mean, it's crazy. I love that. That's one of my favorite scenes ever in music, especially in heavy shit. Like, every band was just great back then, man. I love that SoCal scene's great.
Says us old guys.
Right.
But the question I was going to ask you though, like, so touring in 98 with POD, but how would you compare to now in like 2023? Like, are you guys, I know you're playing Furnace Fest and stuff like that, but like, are you guys going to go out on a tour for like the two records? But like, how are you going to compare that to like 98? Because I mean, shit, it's got to be completely different from then till now.
Yeah, it's not just let's go out on the road. You know what I mean? It's a little bit more strategic. I don't have the full picture yet because I've been so focused on making the music. I woke up the other day, I'm like, well, I guess I need to start thinking about this, putting together shows and such. And we have a big album release event that we've been hyping for like 2 years that we're going to do in Nashville, and I really haven't decided how we're going to attack that yet. So, great question. In the process of answering that, yes, we will be playing with who I don't know. I just want to play with bands that I like listening to, who do heavy music that I enjoy, being on stage with. That's the goal. What that entails and who that entails, I have no idea at this point. But yeah, we'll be doing some shows for sure in late 23 and late 24 to support all this. And we'll have plenty of music to choose from to play. That's for sure.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's going to be the hard part, is choosing the set list, because his new stuff is different. And so it's like there's a whole new audience now, it seems like, emerging, who are going to want to hear, the OMNI stuff. And like, how does that play with the older stuff? The tuning's a lot lower. I'll tell you that much. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm sure it's going to be fun though. It's going to be rad. We have played a few of these new ones live, and they have translated really well. It's been really fun. Good. Yeah.
You definitely
is very heavy.
You definitely see why you guys got lumped into the new metal scene, though. I mean, you go out with POD and Blindside. I mean, back then it's just like,
I mean, I've replayed that tape a lot of times in my brain. I mean, at the time, we were all in on that, and like, POD, has a different sound than we do, but it was still like we were all in on the new metal thing. And, it sort of came and went quite quickly. And then we were on this other side of it going like, the bands that we were listening to were not those types of bands. And we didn't necessarily want to be just pigeonholed into that kind of world. And yet that's kind of what happened. And so that's the tape that I played through. Like, what would this look like if we didn't tour with more of the faith-based bands or the new metal bands? I think the perception of this thing would be totally different. The goal is obviously to get people to listen to your music with an objective frame of mind. And I know that there are a ton of people that won't even give our band a chance because they think that we're this or we're that, whether that's, they're Christian or, they're new metal, it's like, yeah, okay, I get it. Perception is everything in music. But if you're at least a tiny bit open to just checking something out, and you're into heavy music and you're listening to this, and maybe there's a couple things that I said that piqued your interest, give it a chance by going on our YouTube channel, and checking out these music videos, because I guarantee you haven't seen a lot that looks like this or sounds like this. And I think you'll connect with it if you're into darker, heavier stuff with a little bit of a sci-fi kind of bent to it. Sci-fi horror, let's say.
Yeah, see, I'm the same way as you, man. I like music that when I'm done, it makes me feel fucking dirty. Like, I listen to Primitive Man or something, and I'm like, I need a fucking shower. Like, that's just me.
Want people to feel. That's what
I want to feel disgusted after the record's done.
I still can't get through that fucking Chat Pile album. It makes me feel so uncomfortable. I'm like, all right, I'm out. I'm 3 songs in, and I'm like, I'm out. I can't do it anymore. Just change it. Something else.
Yeah, and I think with this record, we found that, but at the same time, found something that's still listenable.
Oh, for sure.
The moments that are gnarly, it's like you listen to the end of the song, track 5, When the Belfry Speaks. I mean, it's seriously, I have not heard a whole lot that sounds more like the pit of hell than that song, except for maybe track 11, the end of track 11. But as uncomfortable as it is, the moment ends, and then you move on to the next moment. And we've got some palate cleansers in there that sort of draw you back. So that was always been a goal too, is like, how do we do something that moves you but still is listenable?
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up the point where, like, people like, oh, take a chance and listen to us. Because like when me and Jay started, we were like, oh, we're going to talk about new metal. But then like we listened to so much stuff. We were like, we need to start getting these kids into like our brain, like what we listen to and stuff. So it's like great
Right.
to have a person like you on with a band as eclectic, like the stuff you're doing, because I think a lot of people miss out on great music because they're so like, I only listen to hardcore. But
Right.
you're
Exactly.
missing so much other good shit because you're pigeonholing yourself.
Yep.
It's just so annoying to me anymore, especially in 2023 where the amount of music that you can get into in literally 3 hours is fucking out of control.
It's astronomical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's galactic in scope. And as a music fan, you're doing yourself wrong by not keeping an open mind now.
Exactly.
Because there are
Mhm.
so many artists pushing boundaries. And that's one of the fun things about existing as a music fan in 2023. There are a
Absolutely.
lot of bad things about it. I've been around when the music industry, when the music industry was an industry, and it no longer is, in the traditional sense. And I miss that. There's a lament in my heart. There's a part of me that's always sad about that. You know, again, old guy talking. But I also embrace the now and constantly looking for artists that do cool stuff that isn't
Yeah.
maybe what I would have been looking for. I personally love anytime there's a female fronted semi pop voice that still has a darker twinge to it, that's doing sultry type vocal over a more electronic but still semi pop production. I love that type of stuff. Everything from Cannons to Lana Del Rey. I love all that.
What was I just thinking of?
Like a
Iris?
Fanagram.
Well, like an iris.exe,
Fanagram.
Tim, right?
Fanagram's great. Fanagram's
Yeah,
great.
Fanagram's great. But yeah, iris.exe.
Iris.exe. And that other band that Adam had us listen to, Maggie, what was her name?
Lindem something?
Maggie Lindemann. Yeah, she's right in that world. Yeah, it's. But to your point, Andrew, that's one of the positives of this, the ability for anybody to get their art out there and just have people listen to it is stuff that normally would have been strangled in the crib or cut off by a greedy label. There's a chance to get it out there. But as music fans, the uncomfortable part of that is, Jesus, I have so much to catch up on.
Totally.
Tim is always busting my balls. I have a playlist on Spotify on our official New Breed channel. It says shit I need to listen to. And I'm always just throwing things in there because I can't keep up. And with today's cycle of it's single, we announce the album, single, album. Everybody's doing that. So it's just single. It's nonstop. It's almost like, Jesus, how am I going to keep up?
Yeah. And again, like that comes back to, how do we get people to pay attention to this?
Right.
You know what I mean? We have to do something outrageous. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I think you guys are accomplishing that, man. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
We've reached outrageous.
Before we get out of here, though,
go ahead.
Tell people about, like, so you're an author as well, correct?
Yeah, this piece for OMNI that I'm working on is my first actual real piece of fiction.
Okay.
I wrote another piece of fiction previously, and I never released it, just because I just wasn't happy with where it ended up, and it was off from where I wanted to go enough to where I abandoned the project like a coward. This is my first piece of fiction, and I'm really excited about it, and I think it will lead to more fiction. It's just really fun to develop characters and to tell stories, and to, you know, any author will tell you that writing themselves into characters and into stories and recounting personal experiences but putting them in with a new skin is one of the most fun things of the whole process. So, you know, Stan Lee, right?
Mm-hmm.
Putting himself into characters and such. So, you know, doing that is so cool, man. It's so satisfying. I can't wait for people to check this out. Now, it's not coming till the end of the year, and the plan is to drop the book and the film at the same time.
Okay.
It's meant to give people a reboot, like, you know, OMNI Pt.1 2.0 kind of thing, and kind of reinvent what we've already released. So yeah, as a writer, you know, it's really fun to tell stories, and the thing that's been cool is I've always been a student of the film genre as well, and I've always, not always, but I've had the chance to dabble in a little bit of the things that we're doing with OMNI and with the media that we're creating, the visual media that we're creating. So taking something that exists as a piece of fiction and turning it into a screenplay of sorts and a script. I'm not doing it in the orthodox way, but I am doing it with the help of a team. And then putting on the director's hat and the actor's hat is all so fun, man. And so it's all the stuff that I love. And yeah, I just want to do more of it moving forward. I would really love to do more like multimedia projects.
Awesome.
Involve the things that I enjoy doing coming out of this, and hopefully the end result is strong enough that people would be intrigued enough to pay attention, whether that's, more stuff that I would be at the helm of the ship on, or even producing content for others, and wearing one of those hats for other people. That's definitely, in the realm of possibility.
Well, listen, we're hitting about that time, but I definitely think if you're up for it, when everything's released, we need to come back on and talk about all of it, because
absolutely.
100%.
I mean, I was not expecting the way that you guys work to be like, for you to tell us that, because it like blew my mind, like the amount of work that went into this, because it's seriously, I can't think of the word right now. Of course, that's just always the way I work. As soon as we're done, I'll be like, oh, that's what I wanted to say. But it's like, like, I'm tired just like thinking of all the work that was put into this. Like, it's super.
We've been efficient. I mean, we've recorded 28 songs, and that's actual 28 songs that will be consumed by people. That's not just like, hey, we have demos, because like demos, it's like 50. So yes, Omni itself will include 23 songs.
Okay.
So we have 5 more that we released as NFT songs for people in our Patreon community who basically purchase their own unique piece of art. Which I don't know too many bands
doing that. No,
the Woo who have done that. Yeah. So and the cool thing is, man, I don't feel burned out yet. Hopefully I never will, but I really imagined by this point I would be like, get me out of here. And I still feel really good and really energized. I think it has to do with how excited the fan base is, how involved the Patreon community has been, the reception of OMNI Part 1, and the team that I work with. It's just really invigorating, all of it. So if I can do this way, awesome, in some form for the rest of my life, I will be a happy man.
I think you got a pretty good shot at that happening.
Yep.
Trying.
Well, listen, man,
I didn't even get to tell my drama story about my vocal cord nodules being miraculously healed and all of the things that went into before this. So I'll save that for next time. I have a really dramatic story about like my voice and the timing and making this record and all this other stuff. So back burner that. We'll talk about it when I come back, and because I'm going to take you up on your offer.
Awesome. Yeah, dude. We would love to have you back, man. Seriously.
Absolutely.
So
all right, cool. Yeah. Tell everyone where they can find the record, all that stuff, because people need to hear it.
Just go to project86.com. You can pre-order the album on vinyl. We have multiple vinyl offerings for this release. Cassette, CD, tons of merch. Pre-order live still on project86.com. We also have our Patreon community link there. And then anywhere you stream music, Project 86, the name of the album is Omni. And visit our YouTube channel for sure if you've never heard the band, where you can check out the music and the first little bits and pieces of the Omni film in the form of 3 music videos at Project 86 Video.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming on, Andrew. We look forward to having another long form conversation. Shit, we could have done just an hour on dystopian sci-fi and Philip K. Dick.
Easy.
Watch Tim's brain comes out of his ears when we start talking about, Blow My Tears, the policeman said. So we want to thank all of our fans for watching, tuning in, and listening. We want to thank Andrew for coming on. On behalf of Andrew, Tim, and myself, want to thank you all for tuning in. Newbreed_podcast at Twitter and Instagram, newbreedpodcast@gmail.com for all your Questions, comments, concerns, and complaints. And until next time and next week, this is Jay, Tim, and Andrew saying cheers.
See ya.